more than anything. You can find more verses on this subject than salvation by faith in the New Testament, if you can believe that. It is a hesitation because it seems to be self-serving, especially when you're a pastor talking on this subject. It's a chief indicator of one's heart. In fact, George, if he were to take his trade and look at your finances, he would tell me probably better than I could where your heart is. The issue is money, all right? And where your checkbook, where your credit card statements, where your bank statement is, indicates in large part, and I can confess in my own spiritual ebb and flow, that when I am generous, I am usually walking close to the Lord. And when I am stingy, I am not. And that's just how it is, because when I am stingy, I think I must have control. And I hoard and I keep and I protect. And when I am generous, I realize, man, I've been given. I've been given. I could give you probably about 1,000 stories on how God has shown himself to be my provider over the 30 or so years of ministry I've been in, just time and time and time again. And yet I still have to get this lesson re-spoken to me personally. I have to learn it again and again and again. I remember I would go each summer when I was in seminary off to the former Soviet Union. The wall had just come down, so I would go and we would share our faith in Russia, usually in Moscow or up in one of the Baltic areas. And I would come home each August broke and tired and a tuition payment awaiting me at seminary. And I was in my last year, my very last year, and I always went in thinking, well, I'll either find the finances to pay for this or God's got a different plan. You get to sign up for classes, and then you get the first 5 days to decide whether or not you keep them or you drop them. And it was day 5, and I had no money. And so I'm walking across campus just talking to the Lord, going, okay, I guess you didn't want me to finish school this year. I guess you've got a better plan for me than this. And I had actually relinquished it in my heart and made peace with it. And I was just like, all right, here we go. And as I walked across that campus, I remember from afar, about 100 meters away, this guy starts walking towards me, and he starts waving his hand, and he goes, James. And I'm like, hey. And he goes, where you been? I go, what do you mean, where you been? And I said, I've been here all week. And he says, well, I've been looking for you all week. And this guy's name, if I had a 6th kid, I would name it after him, but his name's Mark. And Mark said, you know that guy who sponsors me to come to seminary, because we'd been in small group for 4 years. I said, yeah, I know the guy in Louisiana, blah, blah, blah. He goes, well, he gave me a check to see if there was somebody else that might need help to get through this semester. And I was literally walking across campus to drop my classes and to go find a job. And he handed me a check that completely covered my tuition. And then he goes, and you know my wife, she's a seamstress. Well, she made these curtains and she sold them. And just out of the blue, she said, hey, why don't you give this to James Arnold to cover his books? So I went from dropping classes to a complete scholarship in about 100 feet. All right? And it did great things for my faith to affirm that this is where God wanted me. This is what he wanted me to do. And again, I can give you thousands of illustrations of how God has met our needs in the most dire moments, or even in moments that we didn't even know we had needs. And I'm sure you can too. God is a God who's very intimate with where we're at. And if my thought need isn't met, it probably isn't supposed to be met. And making peace with that is a lot of my sanctification process. So in James 5, he starts off with about 6 verses. And I think if you go back through chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4, you're going to see a repetition of brothers, 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 brothers. Because the book of James is written to the body of Christ, the family. But he breaks that here, maybe a little bit in the end of chapter 4, but I'm not so sure about that. But here in chapter 5, he's going to go off and talk about a type of people who probably aren't in the family. And he's going to do it because he wants to show us a contrast of how we are not to be. And it's a pretty negative 6 verses, but it's got a very positive influence upon us if we'll let God speak to us through it. All right? So quit clutching your pocketbooks. I'm not asking for a gift, but let's look at this issue of finances. Come now, you rich. And all of you guys are checking out right now because you're saying, I'm not rich. Trust me, in comparison, you are rich. But he's talking to non-believers here, I believe. Come now, you rich, weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you. And that statement, I think, tells you that this is a foreboding future for these people, which would not be people in the church. Okay? Your riches have rotted, your garments are moth-eaten, your gold and silver have corroded, and their corrosion will be evidence against you and will eat your flesh like fire. It's not a great visual. If you've ever been around farming or something where certain animals die and you have to burn them to get rid of their carcasses sometimes, and it's a horrible smell. Will eat your flesh like fire. You have laid up treasure in the last days. And that is going to play out big for us, okay? That last days. Behold, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, are crying out against you. And the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. You have lived on the earth in luxury and in self-indulgence. You have fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered the righteous person. He did not resist you. And thus saith the word of God. We've all been through high and low times, and it's all relative to where we are at. He's talking to people here who have more than enough. More than enough. And honestly, if we thought about it, we've got more than enough. I've got 2 pairs of running shoes. I've got these low boots. I've got my cowboy boots. I've got a pair of tan dress shoes, a pair of black dress shoes, a pair of black shoes that I only wear at funerals, a couple of pairs of just shower shoes, a pair of beach shoes. How many shoes do I really need? And better to use me in that illustration than my wife, okay? But honestly, if we just take a moment and really pause, what luxuries do we really imbibe? And I want you to know this is not he's not condemning the wealthy. In fact, Proverbs 10:22 says, the blessing of the Lord makes rich, and he adds no sorrow with it. That he gives to some and makes some wealthy. And it's not to bring what we see here in chapter 5, a sorrow along with it. Afghanistan happened, I had more than a few rich people call me. You know why? Because they're like, hey, we know you're in touch. Where can we put money that will help what's going on in Afghanistan? So it's not a blanket statement to the wealthy that you better watch out. Because, let me find my quote here. J.C. Ryle, I think it was him. It is possible to love money without having it, and it is possible to have it without loving it. Money does take away many trials, but it brings some as well. The trouble of getting of it, there is anxiety in the keeping of it, temptations in the use of it, guilt in the abuse of it, sorrow in the using of it, and perplexity in the disposing of it. That money is a double-edged sword. It can. It can get you in a doctor's office when you need it. It can pay for the car problems when they're there. There is no doubt that a simple level of wealth can get you out of problems that some people cannot get out of. That their margin is really thin. And that's okay. It's okay. My pastor, his illustration was always, if you can get 2 scoops of Rocky Road, which is an ice cream in America, then get them. Enjoy. that we are supposed to enjoy the fruit of our labor. We are supposed to have certain accommodations. Where is the line? And this is where the Holy Spirit comes in, and this is where most Christians have the biggest issues. This is why we like legalism. We like black and white. Tell me what is the limit. Tell me where I can go. Tell me where I can't go. So what is the standard of living that I can do and not be in sin? I can't tell you that. God has gifted you differently than me. He has called you differently than me. Some of you are able to sacrifice a whole lot and never feel it. And some people, not as much. And so you can't look at one another and judge. They got more than me. They should be responsible for taking care of this problem. Because in reality, there may be a problem that enters into the church and you might just be making it, and God might be saying to you, handle this. Handle this. And hopefully every week you get some sense that all of this is not by your own strength, but it's by walking in proximity, in the presence, in the closeness of a relationship with Jesus Christ. And that's why we push reading your Bibles, prayer, fellowship, devotions, meditation, because you need to know Him, because He's the one who's going to give you these answers. I cannot. I can give you the general principles that are here before us that you can read too. But when it comes down to where you lay that credit card and slide it through, or now just with COVID, you just touch, that can be perfectly okay for you and might be grievous sin for another. Okay? Come now, you rich, weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you, that there is something coming that isn't going to be good. That these are people who are misusing the blessing that they've been given. If you go to Corinthians, you would see that we are blessed for a purpose. And that purpose is not to get a 3-car garage and pile stuff into it. That purpose is to be a blessing to others. The illustrations we give, and you hear me repeat these always, is we're a leaky vessel, that He fills us up and we're supposed to leak out. Or we're an overflowing cup, that He fills our cup and that we're supposed to overflow into others. That the blessing He gives you as a believer is to share a blessing with others so that they too can feel the blessing of the Lord. Sometimes that's first and foremost to those in your own body of Christ, but then also your neighbors, your colleagues, your relatives, those who need to understand that you overflow for a purpose, not to hoard. We buried my friend's grandfather, godly man, but over his 73 years of life, he gathered a lot of trinkets in his 2-story house. His kids moved out, he stayed in the house. His wife died, he stayed in the house. He never got rid of anything, he just kept it there. He wasn't really a miser or a hoarder. He just, over 73 years, accumulated stuff. Kids and grandkids went in after the funeral, after the death, after some times they were going to sell the house, so they needed to clear it out. They all came in, got one little trinket to remember Granddad because they loved him. But then there were 73 garbage bags on the street. The end of his life was on the curb. We look at these things and think, I got to keep. But I promise you, your kids are going to look at those things and say, why did they keep? Now I just have the problem of getting rid of this stuff. Okay? Your gold and silver have corroded, and their corrosion will be evidence against you and will eat your flesh like fire. Unlike Grandpa, godly Grandpa, these people are hoarding and hoarding. Why? Because they think in their possessions is power. In their possessions is privilege. That there's a valuation, a price that I'm worth more than you because I have greater control, I have more power, I have this. And if you remember the story of Lazarus, not the Lazarus that Jesus called out, but the Lazarus who died poor at the gate, and the rich man who died rich, and there was a chasm between. And that man's riches did him no good. There are miseries coming before you. Your riches are rotting. Your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver have corroded. Their corrosion will be evidence against you and will eat your flesh like fire. Basically, it's saying the more you have is the more evidence there is against you not living a life of righteousness. Again, remember, he's talking about someone outside the church, and he's given us an example of how we should not be. That this is one of the distinctions where we are not to be likened to the world. We don't keep up with the Joneses. You know? My friends laugh at the way I do cars. I do cars until they die. I don't care what they look like really on the outside. I have 3 Chevys that I have gotten 300,000 miles out of, which any responsible dad would never put their daughter in a car over 150,000 miles in America. At least that seems to be where most parents look at me like, hey man, you're not really being responsible here. And that's just change the oil, keep the tires fresh, drive it till it dies. But I had to learn that the hard way because I loved cars. And when I was poor, tried to keep up a decent car when I was in college. And it made me starve to death. And then I realized it's just a means of transportation. If it looks nice today, great. But does it start? Does it stop? Does it get me there? The happiest family I've ever seen to date was in Cambodia. They lived in a room about the size of this space here. There were 8 of them. There were no beds. They had mats that they rolled out. They had no running water. They had a hole over there, and they had a black curtain that went around it, and that was where they went to the bathroom. They literally slept on top of each other. But when you came into their house, it was as if you were just royalty. They treated you well. They laughed and smiled. All these foods came out of nowhere. And it was crazy. They had nothing, but they had joy. When we equate our joy to what we possess, that's called idolatry. When there is anything in your life that if God were to take it away and you could not be content, that is idolatry. We think idolatry is this old 3,000-year thing where they worship before these crazy structures that were made by hand. Well, we're doing the same thing. We're happy, content, joyful if whatever that level is. And we need to be careful. We need to be careful. Behold the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud. Okay, let's back up a little bit. There's going to be 5 things here that he's going to call out these wealthy people for. The first one is verse 3. It says, you have hoarded wealth in the last days. You know, Grandma was right. Godly Grandma, when she taught you, if you got $1, you know, you save 10%, you give 10%, and then you be responsible with the rest. It's pretty much easy structure. Not saying that's the biblical way, okay? But you give, you save, and you be responsible. You're the steward. It says in Chronicles that God is the owner of all things, that all money is his. We like to think that I earned it, it's mine. How did you earn it? Well, I have these skills. Where did you get those skills? Well, I trained at this school. How did you get to go to that school? Well, I was brought up in this country. I had this. Where did that come from? Well, that came from. Where did that come from? And where did that come from? It all came from God. And that's why when you look at the gifts that you've been given, they're meant to first and foremost proclaim and promote Him. And if they make you some change on the side, wonderful. Wonderful. But our lives are not our lives, the New Testament says, that when we became Christians, we turned over everything, including our pocketbook. including our desires, including our ambition, including our gifts to him, because they are all his. You have hoarded wealth in the last days. And the last days is a period of time in which we live today. It's specifically a very technical term in the New Testament, and it's the time between two advents. When Jesus came, little Jesus born in Bethlehem, and when Jesus will come again. The time in between is called the last days. I was having dinner with the Sorensens, and we were talking about all the craziness going on. Hey, what do you think? Is this the end? And I'm like, yeah, we're in the end times, just like Paul was. All right? Is this the end of the end times? That's the question. We don't know. But regardless, we're supposed to live in the time that is at the end. We're supposed to live knowing that this is it. That there's nothing coming past Jesus' next return, or nothing coming between now and then. It could happen today. And so we should live in that manner. You know the story of the guy who says, oh, I'm going to stockpile, I'm going to build bigger barns. Is that Luke 12? I think it's Luke 12. And Jesus says, you fool, you do not even know. You're dead today. And you're hoarding up for tomorrow that will never come. You have hoarded wealth in these last days. And that would probably speak to us more than it would speak to the non-believers he's describing here in verse 3, because we get it. We get it. This is the end. That there is a soul that continues on. We did a Psalm study in our Thursday night study this week, and we realized that the soul is this precious commodity, that our flesh may be taken from us, but your soul continues on. In fact, I can always tell when I'm on the street in Nice or any big city if I'm walking with the Lord or not, because I either see people as what they are physically outward, or I'm mentally going, who's going to tell these people about Jesus? And I just pray for them as I'm walking along. Because we need to see people not just, know the physical outside so you can remember your neighbor, but they have a soul that will live for eternity somewhere. Somewhere. It's not looking good for these people in verses 1 to 6. If we truly believe we're in the last days, then God's timing is upon us, and the imperativeness of living that way should be seen in our credit card statements. Remember the maidens who forgot their lamp oil? They went out to wait for the return of the master and they ran out of oil. We need to be living in such a way of expectation. He's coming back. He's coming back. Our riches are not permanent. Verses 2, verses 3. Whether we are rich or not, our garments will eventually be moth-eaten. Our gold and silver will be corroded or stolen or spent. It'll be gone. So the first one, you've hoarded wealth in the last days. Then verse 4, you've kept back by fraud. You've failed to pay. Behold, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, are crying out against you, and the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. It's interesting that today, one pastor I was reading this week, he said that a lot of the hand trades, all right, if someone's going to remodel your house, they have to go put out this enormous amount of wealth to gather the stuff to redo that. And then they do the work. They actually do the physical labor you're paying them for, plus the materials. But then you get, in our days economy, you get 30 days usually to pay them. Yet they're already out that money. And the Bible's saying, pay them. Pay them when they do it. That these are people that are living probably on that margin. If you're paying someone to do work for you, you're definitely better off. Pay them. Actually, when I was getting ready for this weeks ago, knowing this passage was here, I remembered that I left the country last year without paying a mechanic. And it just hit me. And I wrote him, it was the middle of the night, I texted him. And I was like, dude, I'm back in the country. And I remember I've forgotten to pay you. He had done the work 10 months prior. And he wrote back, non-believer, gracious as all get out. It's like, not a problem. Call me next week. And I gathered cash and took it because I just felt horrible. We need to pay those who do work for us. You might forget, especially if you're me and it's administration. But when you remember, get on it. These people are holding back by fraud, though. They're trying to get away with not having to pay the lesser person because they know that I've got better lawyers, I've got better means. You're not going to take on my house and my power and my privilege. And it's wrong. And it's especially wrong if you're in the kingdom. You have failed to pay. You've held back. And then in verse 5, you live in luxury. You have lived on the earth in luxury and in self-indulgence. It's not what you do with your riches as much as what you do not do with your riches. If it's all about me, if it's all about building up my kingdom, then you're probably living outside of the will of God. In fact, I think I can say you're definitely living outside of the will of God. And you can question me on that, that's fine. But bring your Bible when you do. That we were blessed to be a blessing at some level. You can't compare that level. That's not what I'm saying. Don't compare your giving with your neighbor's giving. It may not even be, the same percentage. We don't pass a plate at this church. And the reason we don't is because what that kind of gives the feeling is, oh, what's in my pocket? Let's throw it there. No. When you give to God's work, you pray about it, you think about it, you explore your options, you ask God, and then you give. You give. I'm here. In fact, another one of his blessings, I wasn't going to share this, but now I just remembered it. When we went up before the church 14 years ago to say that we were coming to France, we needed a big lump sum of money to get all our stuff here, to get 7 people here, to set up shop here, to pay for language school here, blah, 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 blah. And we didn't have it. And so they announced me at the church, big church, I know. And so I'm back in the back talking to people who want to talk after the service. It's real kind of this, it's actually quite, it's a lot of humbleness because people are coming to give to the ministry you're going to do, and it just feels awkward, honestly. All right? And this guy I'd never met shook my hand, gave me an envelope, and I actually don't even remember meeting him there that day. I had dinner with him a few weeks later. But so I get home, it's actually Father's Day, that day that we were presented. We had gone out to lunch. I get home and I hate dealing with money. And so I pulled Jen into the kitchen. I said, hey, help me count this so I can take it to the night service and give it to our administrators so I get it out of my pocket before I lose it all or do something stupid. And we're going through it, and there's all these old friends of 20 years, just giving. And then there's this check. It was a ton of money, deep into 5 digits. And I didn't know the name. I'm like, okay. And I expected it to be Jim Hill, this guy who's a big jokester at our church, just say, oh, here's a $1 billion type of thing. And I'm like, yeah, all right. And so I took it in, I said, and Jerry's our administrator, I said, hey, Jerry, who is this guy? He goes, yeah, he's on the church roll. He lives out in Frisco, town a little bit away. And I called him up because it was such a large sum of money, and I didn't know the guy. I said, hey, did you really mean to? And he goes, oh yeah. He goes, I went to the first service and I heard the announcement and I thought, I'll pray about that. He goes, before I got to Frisco, which is 30 miles away, God convicted me to give this amount of money. So I wrote a check, came back, and gave it to you. It was the amount of money. He sold a house in California, he moved to Texas, and this was the amount of profit he had gotten off his house. And I was like flabbergasted. He has stayed up with me over the 15 years we've been here. I saw him last time we were in Texas, and he feels like it was his privilege to this day to give that towards us. And that's a lot of responsibility for us to think, wow. But he just gave, not out of his abundance, above his abundance. When we live in luxury and self-indulgence, we don't get to feel those type of blessings. Luxury here in the New Testament means to be pampered, to given over to an indulgence, to not being in touch with the world and its ways and the harshness of it, that you are outside of that. I had an elder in our old church who said, hey, if I understand giving right, I should give until it hurts, that it should affect the way my family vacations, it should affect the way my family lives, that I should be giving generously above and beyond. And I'm like, dude, I'm not going to preach when it comes to money next. I'm going to put you up there. It's a difficult subject to talk on. And that's why you guys only hear me talk on it when we come to it on the text. All right? Okay, so the fourth thing in verse 5, you fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. I'm from Texas. There's no hiding that. If you don't know, that we have a lot of cattle there. And what you do is you put cattle in certain fields during various seasons of their lives. The 1 and 2 year olds get this type of grass and they go over here and they do this. But towards the end of their lives, they start making the grasslands smaller and smaller. At the very end, it's called like a stockyard where they're hand feeding them this stuff. And what they're doing in America, we call it marbling the meat. And basically, they're just fattening up the cow so that you've got that nice little strands of fat around the meat so that it's juicy and tender and all these things, okay? And that's exactly what he's talking about here. You have fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter, like an animal who doesn't know it. Yeah, give me some more of that. Yeah, we'll feed you as much as you want right now, because next week we're going to eat you. Okay? I'm sorry, all you vegetarians out there. They say in Texas, you don't work your way up the food chain to eat vegetables. But that's what's going on here. You fatten your hearts in a day of slaughter, that you have taken and taken and taken and taken. You're marbling up your luxurious wealth, but you're making your way to slaughter. One way we see this done, that we marble ourselves and our wealth and prepare ourselves for slaughter, is through debt. It's unfortunate, but the debt inside the church and outside the church is about the same. That we take on, we live above our means. Instead of accepting from the hand of God what He's given us, we find these creative ways. Oh, it'll get better tomorrow, so I will take a loan on this 23% credit card, and I'll just pay it off at the end of the month. But the end of the month comes, and kids needed shoes, and so we just push it. And before long, all you're doing is paying interest, and you're not even paying on the original payment. Okay? That we live outside of our means. We don't trust God that we have been given enough, and we fall prey to these plans of the world who they're out to get your bottom line. They know you've got some profit, and they know you've got beyond the ability of your profit to even dig deeper, and they don't care it hurts you. They don't care it's going to ruin your family. The slave belongs to the master. Don't do it. If you're in debt today, quit. I can't say that. But I'd almost tell you, quit giving to the church and go get out of debt. In the long run, it'd probably be better for the church anyway. I've always tried. We've had a couple times where our roof went out, our plumbing went out, and I had to go into debt for a short amount of time to figure that out. But I sold my truck, actually traded a miter saw for my truck that I still have 20 years later, my 1972 Blazer that you see pictures of occasionally, which will be 50 years next year. Get out of debt. If you're in debt and you need help with that, there's a lot of great Christian programs. Go look at Crown Ministries. Go look at Dave Ramsey. There's several things out there on the internet that are free that'll tell you how to snowball out of your debt, to start paying it off in a way that will get you to freedom, true freedom financially. Don't stay in debt if you can do it. Do not live beyond your means. America, capitalistic state, and it's the ugliest of the ugly on that side. It's got some great things about America, but this is where America is really bad. And we like our stuff. And we like to cut corners, and we like to make profits. So back in the 1900s, we moved factories to Mexico because labor was cheaper in Mexico. And you see countries do this all the time. Send things to India, send things to Pakistan, China, whatever. Well, Mexico is close. Let's move our factories there. But the problem was Mexicans, they weren't capitalists. So they would come to work. They would work and get paid better than they were getting paid in the Mexican employment. But after 2 weeks, they wouldn't show up because we've got all the money we need for this month. And that put factories in a problem. So you know what they did? They brought in, there's an old store called Sears. And there used to be a catalog where you could order things online called a Sears Roebuck catalog. And so they brought in these catalogs and put them in the workers' break room. And they started showing them pictures of all these things that they too could have if they spent a little of their money. And all of a sudden, employment was sufficient because we had sold them into the American dream. Every ad you see on TV, every ad you hear on the radio, I think marketing is straight from hell. Excuse me, you marketers. But it is. They are trying to pull you in. It's a salvation story. This toothpaste will make you smile more because your teeth will be brighter, and that will give you more friends or a better girlfriend or a greater life. This toothpaste will save you. These shoes, this brand name, will make you impressive to your friends and colleagues. That's all it's doing. Hey, wouldn't you like to live like this? Here's your answer. I know you only got this much money, but we can finance it. We can find you a way there. Don't do it. Don't do it. You fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. And then finally, the fifth one, you've condemned or murdered the righteous person, innocent men who are not opposing you, but you are killing them. Okay? If, let me see, where is it? Go back to, was it chapter 2 or chapter 3? Let me find it. It's where he tells us that it is our desires that causes the conflict within. It's chapter 4. What causes quarrels and what causes fights among you? Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you? You desire, you do not have, so you murder. You will do whatever it takes to get what it is that you put your heart's desire on. And that's why we need to be aligned with God. We need to be aligned with his desires. That's why the entire book of James is trying to shift you from you and yours and mine to his and thine. How do I live in such a way that represents to whom I belong? How do I live in such a way to proclaim him to the world in which perceives me? How do I live in such a way that is distinctly different from the world and tells a different means of salvation? It's not the toothpaste. It's not the Nikes. It's Jesus. It's Jesus. We kill. We covet. We quarrel. And we pursue with the wrong passions. Once getting becomes your way of life, then you will do anything to get. It's a belief that there's limited goods out there and I must get mine before you get yours. That I get this spot, you get the spot behind me. I get to elevate here, you get left behind. And when your heart gets that distant from the Lord, you become quite ugly, quite mean, and quite self-serving. Justification comes easier the further away you get from God and his people, God and his word, God and his purposes. First Timothy 6:6 says, "But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world." That's the verse that every pastor quotes, usually at a funeral, that there's no U-Haul, there's no moving trailer behind the coffin, okay? That you go into the earth the way you came out of the earth, that we were created from dust, we return to dust, and that life is not about your possessions. Enjoy them. Care for them. Share them. But don't make it your tangibility of happiness. But if we have food and clothing, Timothy continues, with these we can be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. Sounds just like James. For the love of money, verse 10, is a root of all kinds of evil. Not all evil. This always gets misquoted. But all kinds of evil. It is through the craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. Proverbs 14, whoever oppresses a poor man insults his maker, but he who is generous to the needy honors him. There's over 2,000 verses on how to live responsibly with your finances. You don't need me to tell you how to spend your money. God has given you plenty of instruction. You need to go figure it out and make sure that you are conforming your spending to the way he desires for you, not the way he desires for your neighbor, for you. How much am I to give? How luxurious of a life am I to live? Am I always discontent, trying to keep up and build my kingdom? Or can I manage life here and be generous and give? Can I live in such a way that my heart shows my faith because my finances show to whom I believe? I know some of you are struggling just to make ends meet. And I would say, still consider, where is it that God would have you? What does he want to do? Because when I was in college, I was discipled by a guy who said, yeah, you make nothing, so give a little bit of that nothing. It didn't seem like it was going to do much, my 32 cents each week at church. But I read a story of a church needing a building in a very expensive part of the States, and all they had were college students that cycled through every 4 years, and they never had any money. But the pastor challenged them, hey, give $1 a day. And so each of these students gave about $30 a month over 4 years to a building plan that they would never, ever enter. And I'm not sure buildings are the greatest example of things. I'm not sure how much of that we need. But within a number of rotations of 4 college students, they paid for a building in cash. A little goes a long way in the hands of God. The fish and the loaves multiply. All right, a few applications. Live reasonably. And what I mean by this is within your means. If you get this much a month, don't spend 10% more. In fact, you should spend 10% less and put that 10% aside, as Proverbs says, to save. Okay? Live joyfully is also living reasonably. If you can't give, oh yeah, my leadership team is going to be all over me this week, but if you can't give cheerfully, don't give. Honestly, keep it. Keep it. Until God's got your heart where it needs to be. And you know, maybe it's reluctantly some weeks because you don't know where the bills are going to come from or whatever, but don't give until you feel like God has truly called you to do that. And if you don't trust the leadership on how we do money, you need to come talk to us because that's a big deal for us. That's our credibility. And that's why we do our books openly. That's why we give 10% to missions every year. That's why with the little we have, we try to be transparent. If you got questions on that, you can come talk to me. I don't have answers because I don't deal with it, but I can lead you to someone who does. Okay? So first, live reasonably, putting God first. With that last one of putting God first, let go. Lavish others, love. The greatest command, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul. Well, he says to give, and then he gives you an object for your giving, and that is others. Love others. Love others. Find ways to bless with your finances other people or the ministry. And that would be my third point. After you're living within your means, you're loving others with your finances, think of a legacy. I think we forget on how to leave our money to where it can keep giving afterwards. My kids will get a considerable amount of whatever little portion of this world I have left when I die. But the rest of it is going to go to some ministry somewhere, because that will go further than my children. And my first call is to him. Find somewhere, someone. I've got this one missionary. Ross would know him. No one else would know him. He's obscure. He's soft-spoken, but he's constantly doing things behind the scenes. He's constantly helping people. He goes after the least of these in all the world. And every time I give to him, I just smile. I'm like, I know that's going somewhere. And it's going to do things. In fact, he's reaching into Afghanistan right now, too, in his own way. Live reasonably. Love others with it. And think long term. Leave a legacy for a ministry to continue after you're gone. Because it's not going to get easier in the days to come for churches to hold church. It's not going to be easier for guys to stand up and preach the word. It's not going to be easier for missionaries to go forth. Find ways to leave a blessing to where they can keep going and the theys after them can keep going. Our last act today of application is going to be communion. We always give you a moment to consider where you are with God. We are not to enter into communion in a disruptive manner. We're not to enter into communion without being right with the Lord. So take a moment and pray where you're at. Topher, do we have a song for communion? Okay, so while they play, you can pray, and I'll have the guys come up also.